How many genders are there?
It's a spectrum, so like a lot.
The issue of how many genders are there is going to be something that you're going to run across a lot when it comes to speaking to conservatives. And the thing that you need to have them understand is that gender and sex are not the same thing. Now, this is going to be a hard concept to sell them at first because to them, gender and sex are the same thing. Like they've never made a distinction or they've never been taught the proper distinction. Now, a lot of people might quickly run to the dictionary and show you the definition of gender. I don't like to use definitions because that just shows that you don't have an understanding of the word you're trying to define. But also looking up the definition of gender supports the idea that gender and sex are not the same thing. Gender, by my definition, is just how sex traditionally manifests itself in a person. And the reason I say tradition is because the way society views sex has changed, right? Over time, things that used to be attributed to male or female changes. And that's the beauty of something existing on a spectrum, right? What she was saying is 100% true. Because gender exists on a spectrum and it's not a binary, meaning just male or female, because it's on a spectrum allows you to get different variations. But what that also allows it is for gender to be fluid, for gender to be something that can adapt or change depending how society sees the need to move things around. So a clear example of why gender is not a biological thing, as a lot of people will tell you, is let's take a gender reveal, for example, right? Why is it that a gender reveal that we use the color blue for boy and the color pink for girl? What do the colors blue and pink have to do with human biology? Nothing. They don't have anything to do with biology. We just arbitrarily chose those colors. Now, a lot of people will make the argument with you that, well, blue has always been a masculine color and pink has always been a feminine color. But that's not true either. See, when blue and pink were first started out as colors that people used, men and women wore blue and pink. It wasn't a gendered thing. It was just that people wore pink because it was a nice color and they liked it, so they wore it. Now, over time, more and more people started marketing pink towards women, but that's not because it has anything to do with the female's biology, right? That has nothing to do on a biological level. It's not like if you cut men, they bleed blue and women bleed pink, or it's not like that. Blue and pink are things that we as a society have determined this means boy or this means girls, or this is more likely for women or for men. To be fair, nowadays in society, men and women wear blue and pink. So it's like, it's not even a gender thing really for us anymore. Now, the other point that you can show them is if your sex and your gender are the same, and if gender is not a societal construct, then how is it that they've changed? So, for example, there was a time if I said long shoulder-length hair, eyeshadow, they wore makeup, and they had painted fingernails, you would assume that the person I'm talking about is a woman, right? Those things were used to define a woman. And then the 80s happened, and then those very same terms became something that you could use to define rock stars, like guys who were looking like women, but were sleeping with a lot of women also. So it's one of those things where like society said, hey, this thing that used to mean only women or only women used to engage in, now men engage in it, and it's fine. No one lost their minds. I mean, obviously there were people who pushed back against that. Even back in those times, they said the pants were too tight. It was a demasculation of men, blah, blah, blah. Even though, like I said, those men were sleeping with a lot of women. So by anything, those were the most masculine men, you could say. But this is what they look like. And yet, as a society, we're like, okay, I guess that's what men do now. And no one batted an eye. So again, gender is not on a binary. Gender is on a spectrum and it's fluid. So something that used to do mean women here can change and be here and we can be fine. As a society, we can adapt and we can evolve with that. We're going to be okay. And the last example you can give a conservative who brings up the talking point that gender and sex are the same and gender is tied to your biology, just ask them, well then, here are two separate examples. In languages, why do we gender items, right? Like why in Spanish it's la biblioteca? Does the library have a gender? Do you use the feminine to describe the library in Spanish because the library is feminine? No, we just do that because that's how languages are. And French is the same. It's la table, le jour. Like we have these things that have genders, but we don't gender them because they're actually biologically those things. And now somebody may roll their eyes and be like, come on, man, that's just a language thing. Even the people who speak those languages don't know why we do that. It's like, fine. How about the fact that we gender God, right? If they're a religious person, ask them, do you think God has a penis then? Because we call him a father, we call him a he, he's a him, But God has no biology to speak of. They could make the argument that, well, Jesus is God and the Trinity and all that. But then you're getting into other things. You're getting to like the transfiguration and all that, which again, trans. And they'll be like, no, don't you dare use trans to define my religious stuff. But just focus on the fact that, yeah, God has been gendered as a male, if you will. We call him a father, we call him a he, we call him a him. If God has no biology, then his gender that we give him has nothing to do with his biology. That's just something that's arbitrary that we can't change. By their argument, then God could be a she also. God could be whatever because God doesn't have a gender. But because of the way the Bible is written, God is considered a he. And no one bats an eye at that. Those are three simple arguments you can use for anyone who's trying to say that gender and sex are the same or that there's only two genders. And this is not even to touch upon how there's more than two sexes. That's really where their brain will go. You got to baby step, ease them into it. First, have them make the distinction between gender and sex. And then the next time we'll talk about how there's more than two sexes. At least we know there's three for sure because we have male, female, and intersex. Baby steps though, baby steps. We'll get there.